Good afternoon, everybody. Today I'm chatting with Troy Boisjoli from ATHA Energy. In this interview, we discuss the uranium market and the recent pullback and consolidation that has happened with the price of uranium. And I get Troy's thoughts on where the price of uranium could be heading, which, by the way, if you talk to people who are people in the uranium sector and you bring up Troy's name, they talk about him like it's almost kind of like he's the Wayne Gretzky of the uranium sector based on what he did with the Arrow deposit with NextGen Energy, which is now a multi-billion-dollar company. We also discuss the merger that's happening right now with ATHA Energy, where ATHA is merging with Latitude and 92 Energy, along with ATHA's already massive land package in the Athabasca Basin and their huge cash position to go and do a big boy exploration campaign. And we get into what investors can expect from the company in 2024. All right, everybody, enjoy the interview. Troy, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, great to be back with you.
So let's start off with the sector as a whole. I think that when we look at the price of uranium, some may view what's recently happened as a bit of a pullback. Others may view it as a healthy consolidation. I have to ask, how do you sort of assess what's happening in the uranium market right now? And do you think we could go higher from here in the relatively near term?
Yeah, so from a foundational perspective, the fundamentals have never been stronger. That has not changed within the last 2 weeks. That has not changed within the last 3 weeks. It is, I think it is a healthy pullback. And, things were on a run that likely wasn't sustainable there. And then, a healthy pullback in the market and in the commodity price really represents, in my view, a pretty substantial opportunities for people to then participate within a dip in the strongest fundamental uranium market I've ever seen.
Now, you guys have raised a pretty significant amount of money here, obviously, Troy, and you've got sort of that Saskatchewan humility about you, where you don't really pound your chest too much about your past achievements. But I know from asking people around, and we've had some of the bigger uranium companies on the show recently, and I asked them about the Arrow deposit and who was the big name behind it, and your name did come up. So you've seen some stuff, and I'm curious, when it comes to the whole institutional investor side of things, I'm hearing from some people that there's some pretty big portfolio manager types that are sitting on the sidelines. They're kicking tires, they're doing their due diligence, and it's only a matter of time until those bigger capital flows start to hop in. So I'm asking you, with all your experience and having been in the industry for over a decade, and what's the conversation like now when you talk to those large institutional investors? What are they saying? And is this time different? Do you think we could see some capital start to flow in to some of the explorers, developers, and producers?
Yes. Yes. The short answer is yes. You look at the, we've been doing a significant amount of meetings, marketing, et cetera, targeting primarily institutional dollars and institutional investors. And in general, okay, so there's uranium specific groups that have been, they've been in the space alongside us as long as anyone else in the industry. They've taken a long view for a long time and are uranium subject matter experts. They know everyone, they know the players very well. Resource specific funds starting to build a view on the uranium space. More of the generalist institutional dollars, in our view and from our experience, just now starting to build that thematic view, understand the landscape with a high degree of interest, but not yet positioned. So, it's our view that wave is still coming.
Okay, so let's talk about ATHA Energy. We got the big merger, with Latitude and 92 Energy.
That's right.
This week we saw Latitude, their shareholders, approve the transaction. What's the next steps here with the merger?
Yeah, next steps. Hey, well, first of all, overwhelming support from Latitude shareholders, over 99.6% voter support for the transaction, for the deal. Next step goes into final approval through a court date that'll happen on the 29th of February, followed by full closing. Following the closing, 92 will then close. Is projected to close at the end of the month with their shareholder vote at the end of March, and then early April that will look to finalize that transaction as well. So then on a pro forma basis, you have ATHA Energy, 92 Energy, and LUR coming together with a combined asset base that is really unparalleled across the uranium space, Steve.
So one thing I got to ask you about here is we've been talking with a lot of uranium companies, and some companies are maybe not in the Athabasca area and some that are. And something when I talk to some of the more sophisticated investors or people in the space that they often tell me is that finding a great uranium deposit in the Athabasca Basin is like finding a needle in a haystack. They're there, but they're challenging to find. Is that why when you and your group put together ATHA Energy, having such a large land package and the money to explore it was so important?
Absolutely. It's about scale. It's about being able to explore at scale in the best uranium jurisdiction in the world. So the deposits are hard to find, but it's the best uranium jurisdiction in the world. And that's the trade-off. And so by exploring at scale, what we're able to do, in our view, is have a starting point that has a higher probability that our land position contains one or more deposits of significance in the basin. And off that starting point now, it's about execution. It's about how do we fundamentally explore using a systematic approach that reduces uncertainty, increases probability of discovery. And that's a process that we're going through right now across the entirety of our land package.
Okay, so results continue to trickle in from your massive survey program. What have you learned so far from the program, and does anything in particular stand out to you as a must follow-up target?
Yeah, the thesis is holding. The thesis is that we're going to define tier 1 targets across the largest land position in the best uranium jurisdiction in the world. We invested significantly in that in 2023 and continue to invest in that, the largest geophysical survey ever done. In parallel to that and important, we're also compiling a significant amount of data from government databases and local databases into layers that then add on to the targeting approach. So you define geophysical targets, then you layer on geochemical targets. And we've defined hundreds of kilometers of EM corridors along the projects that we've processed to date. We've also defined dozens of targets. And when I say tier 1 targets, what I'm talking about are geophysical anomalies with a geochemical overlay and with indications that there's uranium in the system. To give you an example, that's how Key Lake was found. That's how MacArthur River is found. That's how Rabbit Lake was found. That's how Triple R and Arrow were found. And we're building up a significant portfolio of targets with that profile: geophysical anomaly, geochemical overlay.
Just from somebody who watches the space and has invested in junior mining over the years, it seems like it's so important to actually have the balance sheet to do it properly, right? Like we see all these tiny little juniors and they've got, they'll raise, a couple $1 million, maybe $5 million. And perhaps they have, a large-ish land package. Maybe they have a small one, but it's expensive to do all this stuff. And then you're kind of thinking, okay, well, we got to save some money to drill and we're only going to have so many shots. Whereas you guys are in a position where you have a huge land package, you have all the money to do everything you think is necessary to go and find those great targets, and then you have the money to go and drill them out. And from my view as somebody who's kind of new to investing in the uranium space, and I look at this whole universe of uranium juniors that exist, I feel like that is a large part of why you guys are uniquely positioned relative to the other explorers in the space.
I would agree. I look at, well, across the board. Okay. So I look at our access to capital and the balance sheet that we currently have. We've raised over $65 million to date into the deal. From there, look at our technical team. We briefly discussed my previous experience in the uranium sector. Cliff Reverie, guy we just brought on, former chief geologist at Cigar Lake, is a qualified person for a number of uranium assets across the basin. You look at the depth of our technical team, and to a person, they have been working on tier one and producing assets their entire career. Which is a notable distinction. And then you look at our land position. So on a pro forma basis with LUR, with 92 Energy, and with ATHA, we have over 7 million acres of exploration property across 3 of Canada's best uranium jurisdictions, not just the Athabasca Basin. We have a discovery stage project in the Gemini project, and we have a 43.3 million pound resource. It's one of the highest grade resources outside of the Athabasca Basin at 0.69%, which is equivalent to the remaining resources at Eagle Point, one of Cameco's producing sites. And what we plan to do with our balance sheet this year is, that overall, once these things close and on a pro forma basis, we plan to invest along the entirety of that exploration risk curve. When you think about it, Steve, it's like you look at a Lassonde curve. And you look at the first run up in the Lassonde curve in the resource investment industry, and that first peak is at, say, measured resources. We are investing heavily on the entirety of the left side of that Lassonde curve, with the full intention of maximizing the amount of torque that we get with those investable dollars into the ground.
Something that is actually Jay who wrote this question, so I got to give him credit for this, and it's something that I've always thought about in the back of my head when I read some of these new news releases. You guys are obviously putting together just this huge data set, and then you guys are news releasing some of this data. Are you concerned at all by the prospect of other juniors using your data to go out and possibly stake some of their own claims?
Yeah, the land position in the Athabasca Basin is really tight. I think if this was, there's never been more ground property under mineral tenement in the Athabasca Basin historically ever, which means that there's been multiple staking rushes that have already happened, which then means that the amount of ground that is available is very, very minimal and on the very outskirts of what you would consider potentially prospective. Okay. So, no, we're not, because we have the ground that we want. We've staked and acquired the ground that we want, and as such, we've went from 3.4 to say 3.8 million acres in the Athabasca Basin. We've got over 2.5 million acres as a first mover in the Thelon Basin as well, and that's why we're across multiple jurisdictions.
And just for my own analysis, hearing you say that, when I look at your balance sheet, makes that so much more believable than if we had a company who news released their data and they didn't have a huge balance sheet and they said that. It's like, well, can you actually afford to stake more claims? Yeah. So it comes with a lot more merit in my view. Something else we want to ask about is you guys were recently added to the Sprott Junior Uranium Miners ETF. How important of a role do you think ETFs like this are going to play in the current uranium bull market?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of dollars that are flowing into ETFs and continue to flow into ETFs. And then, once they position, that's really strong passive buying in the market that is just there and it's on. And so, yeah, they play a significant role. And like you said, we're in the first one on a pro forma basis with ATHA. We'll have one of the largest exploration budgets in the uranium space in 2024. Anticipated to be larger than Cameco is spending this year, and the amount of activity associated with this that will, result in a significant amount of activity in terms of news flow, in terms of updates, etc. And having ETFs positioned or take a position in that pro forma company that's already at scale, we view that, Steve, as an opportunity for us specifically, but also, ETFs are important movers in the market.
Okay, you guys also spent the month of February adding some key members to your management and exploration teams. What can you tell us? What's the value add with the people you've added?
Building out the team. A land position is a starting point, and an asset buildup is a starting point, and it's the people that add the value. It is the people that execute the value creative work on the ground and add value into the company. with that, Cliff, I mentioned Cliff already. Cliff Revering, former chief geologist at Cigar Lake, helped bring Cigar Lake into production. Was there for a number of years. Very highly qualified uranium subject matter expert across multiple jurisdictions. Karina Tyne, corporate, she is also a geologist, but has worked across the spectrum. Is a Swiss Army knife. She helped when I was at NextGen. She essentially managed the Indigenous engagement programs across the board and built extremely strong relationships across the board with Indigenous communities. And then, Ryan, we just added Ryan Gaffini. He has a depth of capital markets experience. He was within Canaccord in the last bull run and participated as a managing director of investment banking in the last uranium bull run, and could not be more excited to be joining ATHA at this time, at this stage in the market, given his past experience in the last round.
So, for investors watching, or potential investors, people who are just like the uranium space and are kind of following what you guys are doing, what does 2024 look like? And I know I asked you this last time, but I'm going to ask it again. Are we going to see drills in the ground? What's sort of the timelines or milestones that investors should be watching out for?
Yeah, definitely drills in the ground. Definitely drilling activity happening, probably in 2 jurisdictions. As you can appreciate right now, we're doing integrated exploration planning amongst 3 different teams. So we have LUR, we have 92 Energy, and ourselves, looking at the combined assets and where we're going to allocate capital. We haven't released direct guidance on that, but what we will be doing is investing proportionally relative to the maturity of the project. So you think about Angulac, 43 million pound deposit. We'll intend to expand that deposit this year. GMZ, the Gemini corridor, that's a recently discovered basement hosted system within the eastern Athabasca region, very shallow at the edge of the basin. We will be drilling and exploring there. You look then across the board, and we'll also be investing in greenfields exploration based off the targets that we've built up throughout the course of 2023 and into 2024. So we will have an extremely active and busy and aggressive exploration program in 2024.
Last question for you. For any investors that are going to be at PDAC, if they want to chat with the company, are you guys going to have a booth?
No, but we do have a talk. We do have a talk in the uranium section. That's on Tuesday. Tuesday, I think it's at 11. Uranium section starts at 10 o'clock and rolls for a couple hours. I believe it's hosted again by David Talbot of Red Cloud. Puts on a great lineup every year. So we have the good fortune of having a speaking spot there. And we're certainly around. So, we'll be around the floor, and we're kind of, as PDAC gets, a bit jam-packed from morning to evening, but we're looking forward to the show.
All right. Well, Troy, thanks for hopping on here. It's always great when we get to chat with you. Ever since we started working with ATHA Energy, we started doing uranium content, and the response has been mind-blowing. There's clearly a rabid interest in uranium stories out there. And I'm actually pretty encouraged by the positivity that exists within the uranium community, having seen some cycles and how shareholder communities react. I know that there's obviously negativity with some people wherever, but I have found that the uranium communities actually as a whole has been a pretty positive space. And we're really excited about what ATHA Energy is doing. I think you guys are one of the few stories that I'm really excited about right now in the Canadian junior markets. And I hope you keep coming back on here over the coming quarter so we can continue to update our audience on what's happening with the story as it continues to unfold.
Yeah, 100%, Steve. Appreciate you having me. And hey, we're excited. I match that sentiment. Again, I've been in the space for the better part of 20 years. I've never seen a market like this. I've never seen a market that is based off such strong fundamentals. And I think that probably is the reason why the broad sentiment across the board is positive, because it's such a foundational fundamental story.
Thanks so much for hopping on here today, Troy.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this interview, please smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Also, let me know what you think in the comments section. Thanks, everyone.